time. So I just want to say thank you to everybody for joining us this morning. This is our first Self-Care Saturday. We will be doing this once a month. And the goal of our Self-Care Saturday is simply recognizing that 2020 has been a very difficult and challenging year, especially as we enter into this holiday season. Self-care is extremely important. And self-care is one of those terms and phrases that is being used more frequently, but I really want us to have an understanding of what self-care really means and how we can practice that in our lives. And so we have partnered with Starry, and they have pulled together some phenomenal counselors who will share with us from their expertise and help us understand practices and things that we can put in place to make sure we're caring for ourselves. Today we have as our presenter, Renee Cameron-Hernandez. She is an LPC, an LMFT, and she's also a national certified counselor. She serves as the Director of Program Training at Starry. She is my colleague, and I'm excited that she is going to share with us today. And I'm going to turn it over to her at this time.
Awesome, thank you. And thank you for inviting me. I think, as you just mentioned, self-care is really, really important all the time, but especially during the holidays, we tend to forget about ourselves sometimes. And then, you add on a little pandemic, right? So this year definitely looks a little bit different. And so I think this is a great idea to kind of share what is self-care, what does it look like? Maybe you guys will get some strategies that you had not thought of before, or maybe you'll just be reminded of, oh yeah, I need to take care of myself. And so we'll go through kind of why self-care is important, what it is, and then a bunch of strategies. We'll do a couple activities. That's why you do need a pen and a piece of paper or a marker or whatever, it doesn't matter. And so, yeah, I'm excited to get going. There is a chat box feature. So if you guys have questions along the way, you can use that, or you feel free to just unmute yourself and ask a question. That would be great. If it's a question you have, it's probably a question other people have too. And so ask away. All right. So first, we're going to watch a video. Hopefully it pulls up correctly. All right, somebody, when I push play, somebody just give me a thumbs up that you can hear it, okay?
The truth is, you don't have anything to give that you don't have. So you have to keep your own self full. That's your job. One of my daughters is here today from Oprah Winfrey Leadership Academy. Stand up today so everybody can see you. You're going to end your first year soon. Oh my God, it's first year. I say to my girls all of the time that your real work is to figure out where your power base is and to work on the alignment of your personality, your gifts that you have to give, with the real reason why you're here. That's the number one thing you have to do, is to work on yourself and to fill yourself up and keep your cup full. Keep yourself full. Now, I used to be afraid of that. I used to be afraid, particularly from people who say, oh, she's so full of herself. She's so full of herself. And now I embrace it. I consider it a compliment that I am full of myself. Because you only when you're full, I'm full, I'm overflowing, my cup runneth over. I have so much to offer and so much to give. And I am not afraid of honoring myself. It's miraculous when you think about it. First of all, for me, my father and mother never married. They had sex one time underneath an oak tree because she was wearing a poodle skirt in 1953. And my dad, to this day says, I want to know what's under that skirt. That's what I want to know. He wanted to know what was under the skirt. They didn't really have a relationship. She wanted one, but you know, he went under the skirt and then that was it. And one time under the oak tree, bam, Renaissance.
Woman is born. It happened there.
That's why I know my life is bigger than that. My life has to be bigger, as yours is, bigger than a poodle skirt. It's much bigger. The design, the reason why I'm here is much bigger than, oh, I think I want to see what's under there. So the ability to take care of that, to honor yourself and that which is greater than yourself, that which was the reason for your being here. There's no selflessness in that, because only through that do you have the ability to offer yourself, your whole self, your full expression of who you are to the rest of the world.
So I like that video because it's just a great reminder of why self-care is so important. So I think sometimes we think, as Oprah was sharing, it's selfish to take care of ourselves, but really we can't give out what we don't have. And so if we're not investing that into ourselves, we can't go out into the world and do the work, right? Offer nurture to others if we haven't nurtured ourselves. If we're not honoring our purpose, right, by taking care of ourselves and making sure that we are our best self and we're showing up as our best self whenever we are helping other people, we're at work, we're with our families, whatever we're doing, right? We've got to make sure that our best self is showing up. And that really comes from taking care of yourself. So one thing that we talk about just to start is regulation. And the reason why we talk about regulation, one, I'm a counselor, right? So this is just what comes to my brain. But you've got to know and like be able to check in with your body and know how you're doing today, right? So sometimes we are moving so fast. We have so much stuff to do, right? We're productivity oriented. We want to get to all the things and do all the things, be all the places, right? That we don't even slow down enough to say, how am I doing today, right? Like, how do I feel? How's my body doing? Until sometimes we've kind of passed that limit and we're like, whoa, I have to slow down now, right? My body is telling me that I cannot go on and do whatever it is that I'm trying to do. So if you can take a moment just to kind of feel your body today, right? Where are you at today? So this is what we use at Starry. We use these with kids and adults. It's called an engine plate. And so the idea is that you look at how your body is. Do you feel in the red? So in the red would be like gas pedal to the floor, right? I've got so much energy. I cannot sit still. I'm really excited. I'm fidgety. I'm moving around. Could also be anger, right? If it's in this red zone. If you're in the blue zone, maybe you're kind of like me where I have a hard time getting going until like 2 p.m., right? I kind of drag a little bit. So you feel kind of sluggish, maybe just not motivated or just not feeling like doing much today. That would be in the blue, right? And if you're in the green, you are doing just fine. So you are just right. There's always things that you can do when you're in the red or in the blue to get you back into that green zone. But really the biggest thing is just noticing where you're at. That self-awareness piece is huge. So just think about, do I have too much energy in my body right now? Do I have not enough, or am I feeling just right? I'm feeling pretty good today. All right, so now I told you guys that if you are in the red or the blue, there's always some things that you can do to get yourself back into that green zone, okay? And these are all things that will be self-care. Did somebody have a question? I guess not. I could have swore I heard somebody say Renee. Okay, let me see what I can do here. All right, so a few things you can do. So the first one is probably the most cliche thing for a counselor to tell you guys to do, right? Is to breathe. But honestly, it is foundational. It is one of the simplest things you can do. And you can do this anywhere, right? I hope that you can breathe wherever you go. But just taking a minute to take a few big, deep breaths can go a long way in regulating your body and your brain. And so you can do this a million different ways. There's a few ways that I like to do. So there's one called square 4 breathing, where you imagine a square, okay? And you breathe in, count to 4, breathe out, count to 4, breathe in, count to 4, breathe out, count to 4, okay? So this, just doing this, right? It seems like it's kind of silly thing to do, right? But it helps your brain to actually slow down. So you recognize, okay, I'm doing something different right now. I'm breathing in a different way than I have been. And that is a great way to get you from either red or blue back into that green zone. Heavy work. So some of you guys might relate with this, but if I am really stressed or not particularly motivated, either the red or the blue, right? Heavy work can regulate my brain and body. So what is heavy work? Heavy work is anything with your muscles, okay? So, and I'm not saying exercise. Exercise is great, but it doesn't have to be like, okay, go run a mile, because you will not catch me running a mile, or walking a mile probably. But things like gardening, right? Cleaning your house. If I have a really stressful day at work, that's the first thing you're going to see me do when I get home is I'm going to clean something. And that helps to calm my brain, right? So that helps me get back in that green zone so that I can be present with my family. Magic mustache is a little bit of a silly one, but I'm going to teach it to you guys anyways. We definitely use this with kids, but it is important for adults as well. So you have pressure points all over your body, right? They do different things. So you guys probably know that you've got 2 pressure points on either side of your head. That's like kind of activates your stress system, right? Can kind of calm your stress system. One right in the middle of your nose. There's one that's on your hand that has to do with stress and anxiety. There's one on the bottom of your foot that has to do with breathing. I don't really know how all of these things work, right? But there is one right underneath your nose that when you press it, it tells your body that you're okay. So if you think about it, whenever you smile, right, usually, generally, things are good. When you smile, you hit that pressure point and your brain goes, oh, okay, I'm doing pretty good, right? I can regulate. Also, in times of crisis, oftentimes you will see somebody in crisis do this. Right? They're hitting that pressure point. Usually they don't know, right? Like, oh, I'm in crisis, I need to help my body regulate. But it's just something naturally that the body does for you. So magic mustache is just simply placing a finger underneath your nose, right? And pressing that pressure point. We suggest doing this for 10 seconds. And then you release, you kind of see how you feel. If you need to do it again, of course you can do it again, right? When I work with teenagers, a lot of them will say, Miss Renee, I'm not walking around my high school, right, like this. Or if you guys are, you know, in a meeting, at church, whatever the case may be, you might not feel so comfortable doing this, right? That might be something kind of silly, but you can always do this, right? We do this when we think all the time. Unknowingly, we're helping our brain regulate, you know? Whatever you need to do, you're touching that pressure point, okay? And that is going to help you regulate. So again, these are just small little things you can add to your daily routine. I'm not asking you to like stop and do an hour of meditation, right? That'd be great. But if you are on the go, these are some things that you can do, some breathing, some of this, right? Stretching. So if you are in the blue, right? So you're not feeling motivated, you're feeling sluggish, stretching can help wake you up. So if you think about it, many of us, when we first wake up in the morning, what do? We stretch. We're trying to alert our body. All right, it's time to get out of bed, right? You might actually stretch in the bed. You might get out of bed, stretch your back, right? All of that is alerting. So that's going to get you from that blue zone to the green. Anytime you lean back in your chair, right? So we see kids do this all the time. They want to lean back in their chair. That's alerting. Anytime you flex your spine, that is going to get you from the blue to the green. Chewing gum. So this is an interesting one. Chewing gum can actually calm you. So if you're in the red, it can get you to the green, but it can also alert you. So get you from the blue into the green. Chewing gum is a really fancy word, right? This is your SAT word of the day, proprioception. Okay, so proprioception happens when you're chewing. It happens a lot of different ways, but it happens when you're chewing. So if you chew sweet gum, that is calming. Okay, so anything sweet. If you chew gum that is like peppermint, mint, or sour gum, that's going to be alerting. So you can kind of be more intentional about what you're choosing. And you can leave today and say that a counselor told you to eat candy, because I did. And then the last one is massage. So again, I am not saying that you need to go get a 1-hour massage somewhere. That's awesome if you can do that, right? Most of us can't do that every day. But simply massaging your own neck and back, you might have realized that you do this already when you're feeling stressed. Oftentimes we hold a lot of tension in our jaws, right? We clench our jaws, in our shoulders, and in our hands. So a good reminder whenever you're feeling stress is just to go through those 3 parts and release tension and give yourself a bit of a massage, right? So massage is also our SAT word, proprioception, that deep tissue touch, right? That's proprioception. So that can help you regulate as well. Okay. So the next part of self-care, knowing who you are. Sounds kind of simple, right? It's actually really complex because we all operate in layers, right? We have many layers to us. There's the layer that we show to other people, and that could be in a professional context or at church or at home. We kind of have our different selves, different layers of what we decide to share with other people, right? And one of those is attachment style. So if you go online, there's a lot of different kind of quizzes you can take on what is my attachment style, right? And there is quite a bit of truth into many of those. And so just knowing more about how you relate to people. Hold on. Sorry, I'm gonna mute. There we go. How you relate to people, how you interact with people. So is it that you feel really good around people, right? You love being around people. Or is it that you love people, but in order to recharge, you need to be by yourself, right? So you may be the person like me where I love family get-togethers. Can't do that right now, right? Unfortunately. But if I were able to, I would be at a family get-together at least every holiday, a lot of times birthdays, right? I love it. However, to recharge, I have to be by myself. So what you will see me do is I will be with my family, and then I go take a break. I go outside, I take a walk, I go for a drive, right? And then I come back and I'm with my family again. But I know that if I do that to regulate, if I take that little kind of self-care break, I can be more present with my family. You may be the opposite of that, right? And you need all the family you can get, all the people you can get. Know that about yourself so that you can take care of yourself accordingly. So if you're in a situation where, oh, I don't know, we're in a global pandemic, right? And it's really hard to be around people, you might want to be more intentional about, you know, setting up a Zoom call, a virtual coffee break, you know, to start your day, whatever the case may be. But knowing yourself and kind of how you interact with people can be really helpful for your self-care. And then these are a couple of kind of reminders that I tell myself when I'm around anyone, right? So this could be, again, professionally, this could be my family, whatever the case may be. Your anger is not my anger, right? You can be angry and I cannot be angry, but still be around you. I do not have to own your anger. Right? Also, your crisis is not my crisis. And when I say crisis, I mean a lot of things. So it could be like, your emergency is not my emergency, right? Your lack of planning is not an emergency on my part. So we go through this with kids a lot, right? Where they bust in the door and they're like, Mom, I have a project that's due tomorrow, right? I need whatever random things kids ask for. I need a green t-shirt and yellow tights at, 10 p.m. Well, I'm sorry, your lack of planning is not my crisis, right? That is not my emergency. I see that you are in crisis, but I do not have to take that on myself. Okay. There's also people in your lives, for many of you, that they seem to always be in crisis, right? And sometimes being around them, you can find yourself joining in on that crisis, joining in on that anxiety, that worry, whatever it is. So you can just tell yourself that's their crisis. I can be here for them and support them and try to nurture them, right? But I don't have to take that on myself. And then the last one, your stress is not my stress. So you can recognize that somebody else is stressed, and then you can say, that's not my stress. I can still support them, I can still nurture them, but that is not for me to take on, right? So these are kind of some ways that you can think about boundaries, which boundaries are great self-care. And we will talk about boundaries a little bit more in a minute. There we go. Okay, so this is where you need your pen and your paper. You just need to draw a circle. It does not have to be a perfect circle, don't worry. I'm not gonna grade you, I'm not even gonna look at it, okay? This is just for you. After we get done with this, you can just wad it up and throw it away. You can hang it on your refrigerator, it doesn't matter. So no judgment, just some type of circle, okay? And then what you're gonna do is you see some words towards the top. So joy, shame, curiosity, anger, and sadness. So what I want you to do is, and we're just gonna do this for about 5 minutes, I want you to think back to childhood, okay? And you're gonna think about these different feelings, words, and was it okay for you to have that feeling when you were small, okay? And I'll tell you why this is important in a minute, but just for now, think about being with your family when you were small, particularly your primary caregivers, whether that was mom, dad, grandparents, whoever it was that usually took care of you. And was it okay to feel that feeling in front of them? And I'll give you an example of this. So in my household growing up, it was not okay to feel angry. If we felt angry, we had to get rid of it real quick, right? So it was like, we're not going to stop this conversation until we're not angry anymore. Or my mom would tell me a joke, right? Or she would distract or minimize, right? So, oh, it's not that bad, right? Or, oh, you really shouldn't be angry about that. It's not a big deal. So it was not okay to feel anger. So how that plays out today is I hardly ever get angry. I learned that anger was not an emotion that I had, that I was supposed to have. So if you were driving with me in a car and somebody cut me off in traffic, right? My first go-to is like, oh, why did they cut me off, right? Like I start to go to anger, but you will see in about a split second, I go, oh, he's probably just having a bad day, right? Or that person's just really in a rush. They got somewhere to go. Because that anger is not okay. I got to talk myself out of it, right? So what you guys are going to do is you're going to think about that. What was okay, what was not okay. And if it was okay to have that feeling, nobody tried to minimize it, to distract you away from it. They just felt comfortable with you feeling that feeling. You're going to write it inside the circle, okay? If it was not okay to feel, like anger was for me, you're going to put anger or whatever the word is outside of the circle. If it was sometimes okay, sometimes not okay, depending on what was going on, you can just write it right on your line that you drew, okay? And I'm going to give you about 3 minutes to do it, all right? And you're not going to share this with anybody. This is just for your own reflection, and I'll talk about why it's important. All right, I'll give you 1 more minute. Okay. So you might still be finishing up. I know it's a big ask that I just asked you. This is not a simple question, right? Think back to your childhood and think about feelings, you know. And so if you're still working on it, that is okay. Or if you didn't finish it, you can always finish it later, right? So the reason that this is important is the self-awareness piece, okay? So whenever these things come up for you that are outside the circle, so the feelings that were not okay to feel when you were a kid, sadness, anger, whatever it is, right? Whenever those feelings come up for you in everyday life now, you're gonna need extra self-care, okay? Because it's harder on you, on your body, on your system, on your brain to experience those situations where those kind of feelings come up. So let's say that sadness was not okay for you when you were a kid. So maybe you had a parent that every time you felt sad, they had to make you feel better, right? So they would tell you a joke, they would tickle you, they would buy you something, you know, take you for ice cream, whatever the case is, they just were not okay with you being sad. They had to fix it, right? If that's the case, if something happens in your life that's really sad, right? Maybe you lose a loved one, maybe you lose a job, maybe you have to move, whatever the case may be, sadness comes up. It's going to be extra hard for you to process through that. And so you need more self-care than you typically do, right? So it's great to know these things anyways, because you know whenever they come up, you can kind of tell yourself, oh, I'm doing it again, right? Right now, I just need to be angry, and that's okay. Right now, I just need to be curious, and that's okay. So that can help you in one way. And then the other way, like I said, is just reminding yourself, I'm going to need a lot of extra self-care right now. For clients that I work with, where sadness was not okay when they were young and anger is not okay when they were young, a lot of times they struggle with bereavement, right? And so I ask that they get extra support if that ever comes up, because they really need to process through those emotions of sadness and anger as they come up when somebody's grieving a loss, right? And that's any type of loss. So like I said, it could be loss of a job. It could even be right now, loss of a way of life, right? That we can't do many things that we used to do. I was talking to someone recently who their thing, right? Kind of like their big self-care thing is they love to go to concerts. That was their thing, right? They went to concerts all the time, like at least once a month, if not more, and very into the music scene in Austin, right? And this was their thing. So right now they're grieving the loss of a way of life because that thing they're not able to enjoy right now. So even in times like that, right, we need extra self-care. We need to find more and more strategies to make sure that we're taken care of. Okay. So this actually comes from a parenting model, but I want to talk to you guys about it today. So these are the 4 characteristics that somebody could exhibit any given time. And in fact, for this particular model, they say that we all go through all of these things on a daily basis. Okay, we kind of all show these characteristics, daily. So you have the nurturer or the caregiver. So this is the part of your personality that takes care of other people, right? Takes care of other things. The nurtured. So are you able to receive the care? Okay, so anytime you receive caretaking, nurturing, you are in that nurtured box. The perpetrator or the bully. So this is the person that can sometimes be cruel, not just to other people, but it could be to yourself. And you're capable of hurting other people. So whether that's saying something mean, sometimes you might get into an argument and you know just the thing to say, right? That's really going to get under their skin. And sometimes we do it, right? We say it. And so if we're doing that, we're in that perpetrator or bully box. And then the last one is the victim. So this is the part who believes the hurt and pain is justified and valid. So an example of that might be if somebody does say something unkind to you and you think, well, I deserve that because of whatever reason, right? You might be in that victim box. So again, for this model, it says we go through all 4 of these all the time, but we're always going to kind of hang out in one box. One box is going to be our comfort zone. And for many people that I come in contact with, their comfort zone is that nurturer box. So they like to take care of other people. They feel good when they can provide something for someone. give hugs, emotional support, financial support, right? Charity work, volunteering, all of these things, you're in that nurturer box, which is great, right? You definitely want to be around people that hang out in the nurturer box. They are great friends. They're supportive family members. Where people in the nurturer box struggle is being nurtured, right? So if you're always the person helping, you're always the person listening to other people's problems and concerns and issues. You're always the person that's providing, that's caretaking. Maybe you're the person in the family that primarily takes care of the children in your family, right? Or if you have a family get together, you're always the one that's cooking or cleaning up after everybody, whatever the case may be, right? You've got to practice going to the other side of this chart, right? And receiving the care. Because a lot of times those nurturers, when someone says, oh, can I help you with that? What do we say? No, I'm good, right? I'm okay, I got it. I can do it on my own. We need to be nurtured as well as nurture, okay? And so finding a balance there is ideal. So when someone says, hey, can I help you with that? Your first instinct might be, no, thank you, I'm good. But you kind of got to press that down for a minute and go, no, you know what? I'm going to accept this. I am here for this help. I am here for this nurture. I know that it feels good to nurture other people. So I'm going to give this person this opportunity to nurture me because I know how it feels. So again, self-awareness, right? If you find yourself in those lower two boxes, what we talk about again is just self-awareness. I know I'm being the victim right now. I got to find myself a way to get into one of those top two boxes. Same thing with the bully. I got to find myself a way to get into one of those top two boxes. So I like this little visual and just remember to stop yourself in the moment and try to do something that may be out of your comfort zone, but ultimately it is great self-care, okay? You're not going to be as exhausted. You're going to be more supported, right? If you can kind of balance these top two boxes out. So this is not something that we'll do today just because of lack of time, right? But it is something that I can send out. And so this is a self-compassion scale. You can also find this online where you can actually do it online so you don't have to score it yourself, which is nice. But again, it's just taking the time to slow down and say, how am I really doing? Not how do I think I'm doing? Not I don't want to think about it right now, right? But how am I actually doing? How do I actually feel about myself? How supportive am I of myself, right? And so doing things like this can be really helpful to make you go, oh, wait a second. And you see down at the bottom, it'll tell you there's like a self-kindness. There's 2 items for self-kindness, 2 items for mindfulness. So you might find that there's certain areas of your life where you're like, whoa, I really kind of need to work on that. And this is another way to do that. So this is the wellness wheel. And there's a couple of different iterations of this, but this one is my favorite. So when we think about self-care, there are different ways that we can take care of ourselves. So you have spiritual means, emotional, intellectual, physical, social, environmental, and financial, okay? So the way that this is explained is this is a wheel. So if you think about each section and how well you're doing in each section, are you pretty balanced where you could roll this wheel down the street and it would get somewhere? For many of us, that's not true. So for many of us, we have 1 or 2 domains where we're like, yep, I got this, right? I have my spiritual well-being that I'm taking care of. I'm taking care of my social connections by being social and doing those things. And I'm taking care of my physical wellness. So I'm exercising. That's great. That's amazing, right? But you've also got to add on the other domains as well. So the best thing you can do is have a well-balanced wheel. So if that means that your social wellness, you got to take a couple of steps back so that you can add to your environmental wellness, right? So it's just the idea of having a good balance of all of these things. And again, I'll send out this presentation. Hopefully it can get shared with you guys so that you don't feel like you have to write notes or anything like that. And these wellness wheels are online. So you can kind of go through, and my favorite activity to do with this is to just print it out and use something to color with. It could be a pen, it could be crayons, markers, whatever, and kind of color each domain for how well you think you're doing. And then you can kind of step back and look at your wheel and see if it's balanced. And then just give a little bit more attention to those areas that are more difficult for you. For me, I'll tell you right now, social and physical, not looking good on my wheel, right? I have to be really intentional about setting up social situations, ways that I can interact with friends and family. And then exercising is just tough for me. I don't want to exercise. I have to be intentional about it, right? I have to set a timer and make a plan and a calendar, right? So that's what you got to do in those areas that are more difficult. All right, now I'm going to give you guys a bunch of self-care strategies, and we'll kind of talk through each one. So one, and this one is highly underrated, is going to bed early. So getting enough sleep is big. So anytime, you know, we live in a society now where we always think we're going to miss something, right? We're going to miss out on something. Something's going to happen, you know, between 9 o'clock and 11 o'clock that I'm going to miss, and it's just going to be the end of the world, right? But if you can get more sleep, it really goes across the board. That wellness wheel, all of those domains are affected by sleep. Your mental status at a very kind of foundational level is affected by sleep. And working at the state hospital, if somebody comes in crisis, the very first thing we ask them is about their sleep, because sleep can affect so many things. So finding ways to maybe go to bed early, maybe sleep extra 30 minutes in the morning if you can. Take a power nap. So power nap is 20 minutes. 20 minutes can actually do a lot of great things for your brain. So sleep. Waking up early. So this does not go with sleep as well, right? But if you can find a way where you are waking up early enough where you don't have to rush to get ready, right? So for me growing up, I would always wait until the last possible minute. And then I had every minute accounted for, right? From this minute to that minute, I'm gonna brush my teeth. From this minute to that minute, I'm gonna take a shower, whatever it is, right? But every minute was accounted for. Well, what happens when you do that, right, is there is no room for flexibility. There's no room for breath, right? For eating a nutritious breakfast, for taking a walk, whatever. So even just waking up 30 minutes earlier and maybe going to bed 30 minutes earlier, you can kind of set the intention for your day, okay? Exercise and walking, of course. Exercise and walking releases all kinds of feel-goods in your brain. All kinds of feel-good chemicals, serotonin, dopamine, all of these things that make you feel good. And so I always, you know, that's kind of step one on an action plan in counseling is, can you go for a walk? I always put walking because people often think of exercise like, oh, I have to do this big thing. I have to go take an hour Zumba class, right? Or I have to do a 45-minute yoga class. That is great. If you can do that, yes. But you can also just take a walk. 10-minute walk around your neighborhood, around your work, whatever it is, could go a long way. Connection. We need other people. Even if you are as introverted as they come, right? We need connection. Our bodies need it. Our brains need it. We are a kind of a species of community, right? We need community. So whether that is your church family, your friends, your coworkers, whatever the case may be, connection is important. Laughing, of course, again, releases those feel-good chemicals in your brain. And so laughter can do a lot for you. Eating nutritious food. So making sure that you are getting enough, right? Nutritious food. It doesn't mean deprive yourself of the good things in life. Of course, you can have those, right? Moderation is always the key. But making sure that you are being intentional about your food choices. Drinking water, right? I love, they have these bottles you can buy on Amazon where you fill it up and that's how much water you're supposed to drink for the day. But throughout the day, it gives you a little pep talk, right? So you drink a little bit of water and it's like, well, if it's noon, you have a ways to go, right? Or hang in there, you can do this. And so making sure that you get enough water. If you're dehydrated, you actually lose 10% of your cognition. So 10% of your brain is not available to you if you are dehydrated. And that could be for regulation, for focusing on something, for driving, for remembering to do self-care, for being present with your family. You're already at a 10% deficit if you're dehydrated. So water is a big deal. Gardening and being in nature. So gardening is part of that heavy work that we talked about at the beginning. So really important. Being in nature also releases lots of feel goods in your brain. So sunshine, you know, digging around in the garden kind of gives you all kinds of sensory input. So that releases the feel goods. So it's a great thing to do. Reading an interesting book for 10 minutes a day. So I made sure to say interesting because I don't mean reading something for work for 10 minutes a day, right? That's not what I mean. Or, you know, reading the news for 10 minutes a day. That could be interesting, but it can also be traumatizing, right? As most of our news is these days. So find a book, an article, something that you're really interested in, something that, you know, maybe it's a hobby, maybe it's a type of book. So maybe you like fiction, maybe you like, you know, drama, whatever it is, and read just 10 minutes a day is great self-care. Again, getting some sun. So vitamin D obviously is really good, but it also releases some of those feel goods in your brain, just being out in the sun, feeling the warmth of it. Journaling. So this is another kind of cliche counselor thing to say, but I want to tell you guys that a journal can look a lot of different ways. So oftentimes I'll hear people say, you know, I like the idea of a journal, but I just never do it, right? Like I never sit down and write, or I don't have the time to write. I don't have, you know, that space in my schedule to sit down and just write in my journal. Or I've also had people that are like, you know, I write in my journal and then I judge myself for how I wrote and I want to rewrite it, or, you know, what I said, or I didn't make sense, or whatever. You can journal a bunch of different ways. So one way that I think is pretty convenient is on your phone. So many of you that have a smartphone, you're gonna have a feature on your phone that says notes, or it's a video memo, right? Or audio memo, right? So you can just record yourself talking. You can do this in the car, right? You can set your phone down, push that audio record, and as you're driving, you're journaling. You're saying, today this happened and it wasn't ideal. Today this happened and it was amazing, right? I'm feeling this way about this thing that this person said. I want to be more intentional about this goal that I have. I want to talk through, you know, my thinking for this, right? You could always go back and listen to those if you wanted to, but really the power of journaling is just getting that out, right? So you're getting that out on paper or through the recording or whatever it is, but you're organizing your thoughts as you connect what you're thinking to what is coming out of your mouth or what you're writing down. Lots of other ways to do this too. I've had adults that, you know, instead of writing in a journal, they draw. So they draw something, they do some type of art to kind of organize their thoughts around their day or what they're thinking or how they're feeling. So lots of different ways that you could journal. I actually had one client once that made a, what do you call it? She crocheted a quilt, or not a quilt, but like a blanket, right? And so that was her journal. So however she was feeling that day, she would pick a color of yarn that went along with that feeling, and that's what she would crochet that day onto her blanket. And eventually she had this massive blanket and it was all multicolored, right? It was beautiful. But she could look at it and think like, well, on that day, I must have been feeling really happy. And that must have been a rough day over here because I chose this color, right? But that was her way to kind of organize her thoughts about what was going on. Do things with more intentionality. So sometimes I hear people say their self-care for the day, right, is they're going to take a shower. Okay, right? Like many of us shower and that's just what we do, right? That's not necessarily like a self-care strategy. But if you do it with intention, it really can be. So anything that you do throughout the day, if you do it with intention, it can be self-care. So if you remind yourself that you're taking a warm shower and you have this soap that you really like and you are nurturing yourself, right? Or you're taking that extra 5 minutes in the shower to feel really relaxed. And that's your intention. So if you're being intentional about it, it can be a self-care strategy. And that goes for a lot of things. So it could be like taking a nap. It could be like taking a shower. It could even just be how you put your shoes on before you leave the house, right? You do that in a way that you're nurturing yourself. And so it's a great way to kind of fit in tiny bits of self-care where we can when we're really busy. And then meditation and coloring. So for many people, first of all, meditation does amazing things for your brain, okay? But many people cannot sit still and meditate. I'm one of those people. I actually have ADHD, and so just the thought of trying to sit still and like not think about anything, it's never going to happen for me, right? But coloring actually gives you the same advantages that meditation gives you. It makes the same parts of the brain fire. So some research came out a few years back about coloring and how, you know, they hooked up people's brains to all these different electrodes, and some were meditating, some were coloring, and they saw that the brain was firing in similar patterns, right? So that's when you guys saw this explosion of adult coloring books, right? Michael's had all these, you know, books for adults to color, and it came from that research because it showed that you get those same positive effects of meditation just by coloring. So, and then of course, spending time with pets, friends, and kids. So pets have a great way of nurturing you while you nurture them. They don't judge you, right? You can talk to them if you want to. They're not going to tell anybody what you told them. So it's great to be around pets. It's great to be around your friends, right? Just reconnect. Get that social part of your wheel, get that need met. And then kids have a great way of making you laugh, making you smile, bringing about joy, right? Giving you opportunities to nurture somebody else. And so being around kids can be great as well. So the last thing I'm going to go over, and I'm going to do it super fast, is self-care during the holidays and a pandemic. So a few different things that you can do. The first is set boundaries with family, friends, and at work. So maybe you need to say no sometimes, right? Maybe you're the person that always does things for other people, and they're used to that. And so they're always going to ask you to do stuff. And if you're like, you know what, my cup is kind of getting empty, right? I need to kind of invest in myself right now. It's okay to say no. It's okay to set that boundary with family and your friends and at work if you're kind of overworking. Remember that every family is different. So the way that every family is handling this pandemic is different, right? And that's okay. We don't need to judge others for that. We don't need to feel a certain way about our preferences, right? So it might be that you tell other people, for me and my family, we're not going anywhere for the holidays, right? That's what we've decided to do to keep ourselves and our family members safe. And that's what we're doing, right? That's a boundary. You might hear some people say, oh, well, you know, you're taking it too far, or, you know, but can't you just see one family member? Or can't you just do this one thing? And for you, it's no, I can't, right? And that's okay. So just remembering that for your family, you get to decide what is best for you and your family, and try to block out all those judgments that will often come in when other people think that they have better ideas about what should be happening with you and your family. Manage your expectations. So remember to set the bar appropriately for yourself, your children, and your family, and don't overbook yourself. I do this to myself and my family all the time, where I want to do all the things, right? We go on vacation, I want to do everything. But that's too much, and I can't really enjoy any one thing if I'm doing too much. So sometimes you got to look at your calendar and go, we really need to take some stuff out, right? Because this is too much. If you've had a really long day, remembering that whenever you're setting the bar, you're setting your expectation for yourself and for kids that might be in your care. So if you've had a really long day, they're probably tired. You're probably tired, right? If you're all hungry, there might be a little bit more conflict, right? Because everybody's feeling hangry. So just making sure that you manage your expectations appropriately. And then again, self-care, which is what we're here today to talk about, that you cannot, you must fill your cup in order to fill anybody else's, right? So it's the idea, if you're on an airplane, something happens and those oxygen masks come down, they always tell you what? Put yours on first, right? And then help other people. Because if there is no you, right, there is no help to give. And so you've got to make sure that you're doing that. So the last slide today, I just want you to use your pen and paper, and you don't have to write the sentence, okay? But in order to take better care of myself, I pledge to, and I want you to write down what you pledge to do. So if that's you pledge to read more, to exercise more, to slow down, right? To not overbook yourself and your family, to set boundaries, to spend 10 minutes a day coloring, right? To garden. It's kind of freezing outside right now, but when it's not freezing, whatever the case may be, I want you to write that down. And place that somewhere in your home where you see it, right? So that you are reminded of that thing that you pledged to yourself, to take better care of yourself. Not just right now, it is harder during the holidays. It is harder 100% during a pandemic, right? But you need to be reminded of this regardless of the situation, that you have value, you are worthy of being taken care of, especially by yourself, and that you have a plan, right? Something that you want to do better. All right, guys, you did it. You did amazing. I know I talked really fast, and that was probably a lot of content to cover in an hour. If you have any questions, please feel free to chat, or you can unmute yourself. Other than that, that's all I have. I don't know if there's any closing remarks.
I would say thank you so much for sharing all of this wonderful information. It has been helpful for me. I took a lot of good notes. I made my pledge, and I'm excited about working towards that. I do want to provide some space for people to ask questions. If there's anyone who has a question that you would like to ask at this time, you can unmute, and we'll do about 5 or 10 minutes of Q&A.
That's good.
I have a question on knowing who you are. You said there are different attachments online that we can look those up and do that quiz. Where is that exactly?
You know what? I'll send it out because it's a really long link. It's like, you know, those links that are like, you know,
Yes.
2 lines long. But I'll send it out, and then I guess it can be shared with you along with the
Okay.
presentation as well.
All right. Thank you.
Yeah, of course. It is really interesting to do those assessments because I think that one particularly, it's one of those where you do it and then you read about it and you go, oh my gosh, that's me, right? You start reading through things and you're like, I do that. That's why I do that, right? So it can be a pretty cool one to do.
Does anyone else have a question they'd like to ask?
May sound silly, but I had difficulty getting on, so I was late joining the group. But you were talking about chewing gum, and you said something about chew sweet and it does something, and peppermint does something else. I don't chew gum a lot, but with COVID and the mask, I suffer with dry mouth. So I usually, if I'm going to be away, I pop in a piece of gum or something like that. So what were the meanings of the two, sweet versus peppermint?
Absolutely. So sweet gum is going to calm you. So if you feel anxiety or you feel like you're kind of in that red zone that we talked about, so like too much energy, you're fidgety, or you kind of have, you know, you're anxious, maybe in social situations or whatever the case may be, sweet gum will help you. So that's calming. The other side to that, if you're kind of trying to wake up, then peppermint gum or sour gum. So any kind of like minty flavored gum and then any type of sour gum will alert your brain. So it will kind of keep you awake, if you will. I always tell, and this may be bad, right? But for me, I have a hard time sitting still, right? And so I would use, and this sounds bad, but if I do sit still, like if I am forced to sit still, I get really sleepy and I don't want to fall asleep, right? So when I was in college, when I was in grad school, I always had like 4 packs of gum in my purse because I needed that peppermint gum to stay awake and alert to focus on whatever I needed to focus on. So yeah, peppermint and sour is alerting. Sweet is calming.
Very good. Thank you.
Uh-huh.
Are there any other questions?
I do have a question. Thank you, Renee, for sharing with us and being a part of this experience. I wanted to ask the question,
That's the
what
problem.
would be some good,
Once
what
I
are some
learned-
good,
I'm sorry.
can you hear me?
Yes.
What are some good first steps to start kind of building those habits of self-care? Oftentimes we have not done it frequently enough and we haven't built those habits in our brain. What are some good first steps for us to start building better habits for self-care?
That is a great question. Start small, right? So sometimes we get really ambitious and we're like, yes, I'm going to take better care of myself. So my plan is going to be an hour of exercise a day, 30 minutes of meditation, 17 glasses of water. I'm only eating plant-based diet, right? We do it all at once. Like we go for it, right? But if we do that, we're less likely to stick to it, right? So I would suggest start small. Pick one thing that's like 15 minutes a day at the most, right? So maybe it's, I'm going to go to bed 15 minutes early. And then once that kind of builds up and becomes a habit, you can add on something else. So for counseling, the way that we talk about change is that you have to do something consistently for 6 weeks for it to become a habit. So 6 weeks is a long time, right? To stick with something that you're not used to doing. So that's why you've got to start out small. So pick something that's like 15 minutes, or I'm going to meditate or pray 15 minutes a day before my day starts, right? Not an hour, not 2 hours. That's too much. 15 minutes. So yeah, that's a great question. Start out small for sure. Also, just pick something that you're really interested in. So not something that kind of really pushes you outside of your comfort zone, but something that's kind of in the middle, right? So like if you're not comfortable with meditation, don't pick meditation as your first self-care strategy to start with, right? But if you're kind of like, you know what, I'm really interested in cooking, right? I really love to cook. Okay, I'm going to cook one new thing a week that's nutritious, because I'm interested in it. I'm going to be excited about it. It's only one day a week, right? So start small and keep it interesting. And Michael, were you going to say something earlier?
Yes, I was trying to. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I was saying about the meditation piece. That is something that I've always been interested in, but like you, I'm ADD and meditating, and I've always, as a minister, I've always been an admirer of those whose prayer lives are just as strong as they can be. I can't sit up more than 15 minutes and pray because I'll be asleep. No matter
That's right. Uh-oh, you went mute. Now I can't hear you. Maybe. Can you guys hear him?
No, your sound went out, Reverend Babers.
We lost you.
I don't know if he can hear us.
I can still hear you.
Okay.
Oh, there you go. You're back.
My internet is a little weak here because we've got like 5 different devices on our internet, and so it kind of blanks out.
I'm sure we can all relate to that. So for meditation, yes, I'm with you. Like you and I, we are the same, right? In that I cannot sit still either. I will be asleep. Or I just can't stop my brain, right? My brain just keeps going.
Yeah.
And so things like coloring are helpful. Or if you can kind of pray and reflect and things like that while you do something else. So walking is one of the best things you can do. So walking is bilateral stimulation, is what we call it. So if you can walk and talk or walk and reflect, that can help you for sure kind of combine those two things, and help you kind of be in your thoughts without, right, like straying away or getting sleepy, which is what I do. So yeah, either walking and talking and reflecting, or coloring and talking and reflecting could help as well.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, 100%. A lot of people relate with that because you ask them to sit still, you know, for 15 minutes and they're like, that's called a nap.
Yeah,
I sit still for 15 minutes.
I can't ask my children to do it because I know I can't do it.
Right. Yes. Yeah, I can relate to that for sure.
Renee, we once again want to thank you for sharing your time. Before you close, could you just tell us a little bit about the services that Starry provides and how we might be able to utilize those services?
Yes. So we at Starry, we have a few different programs. So one program is counseling, and that is for children and their families. So children typically between 6 and 17. There's a couple of other things that we could do for children under 6, or children that are 18 and still in high school. So we offer free counseling, and that is regardless of insurance status or income status. So we don't, you know, it doesn't matter how much you make, how little you make. If you have insurance, you don't have insurance, it doesn't matter. You can get free services at Starry. So you would just call your local number. And so I think you guys are in Waco, so you call the Waco office, and I can send out that number as well. And they'll set you up. A great thing about Starry Counseling is we are state funded. That's why we're free. But what comes along with that is we are not allowed to have a waiting list. So oftentimes you'll call for counseling and it's a 3-month waiting list, a 6-month waiting list. We actually have to get you in within 7 days. And so you will get services pretty quickly. All of our services are mostly virtual right now. So you'd be meeting just like how we're meeting now with a counselor. And again, we offer those services to children and families. We primarily do family counseling, but we also do some individual work with kids. Also do parenting classes, youth skills classes. So these are classes on things like anxiety, all kinds of different things, social skills, right? We have things called parent cafes that we do where parents come together and learn from each other. So those are the services within the counseling program. And then we have our fatherhood program, which is very similar, but it's specific to fathers. So at Starry, we value the role of the father, right? And we recognize that sometimes services are geared towards the mother more, right? When you're just out in the community, we have a lot of services for moms. And so we love that we have some father-specific services. And those are things like coaching, like Fatherhood Academy, like father groups, right? Dad cafes. So it's like a parent cafe, right? But it's just dads coming together and saying, what do you do when your kid does this, right? Or what do you think about this? And learning from each other. So that's really cool. Again, services are free, and that's in your area. So super excited about that because that's one of our newer programs. And so we're happy about that one. And then the last program is foster care and adoption. So we do foster care and adoption in Williamson County, and also Bell County and kind of the central Texas area. So Temple, Killeen, and then Williamson County, but we kind of go out of that area sometimes. And so if anybody's interested in being a foster parent, we definitely need foster parents. There were about 8,000 kids last year that didn't have placement. And so that's unfortunate. We try to work to where that doesn't happen. And then adoption. So we have a lot of foster families that end up adopting kids as well. And that's always super exciting to go to the courthouse and watch that happen. So yeah, that's all of our programs. If you have any questions about any of those, you could always email me. You're going to get a bunch of information from me. I got to remember all this stuff. I'm going to write it down here in a second. But one of those things will be my email address. If you have any questions about any of our programs, you can contact me. I'm happy to answer questions.
Good. Well, thank you once again. St. Luke, if you could just show Renee some virtual love in your screens. Just wave your hands at her. If you want to put something in the chat box, please do that to let her know that we really do appreciate her sharing her time. Thank you. This is our first Self-Care Saturday. We will do this once a month, really to help us learn some strategies to be able to be more healthy, to be able to be more whole, to really build out that wheel holistically, so that we don't have areas that are diminished, but we can really be healthy. And so I want to say thank you for sharing your time. St. Luke, it's always good to see you, and we'll see you tomorrow for worship. You have a wonderful, wonderful Saturday. God bless you.
Thank you, guys.